pretty sure that if I asked you to think of 5 or 10 antagonists you encountered in horror games, some female characters would definitely be among the first ones that came to mind and refreshed your memory. This is not a coincidence because somehow, when it comes to horror entertainment, the female antagonist can actually be the most effective in many cases for so many reasons that we can't explain easily. I mean, if you dig into the history of horror in movies, you'll find out that having a female mysterious entity is always an element that intensifies the suspense even further and makes you wonder even more about the background story of this female and how she ended up like this. Whether it's a possessed individual or the ghost of a girl with an uncomfortable past, or simply an evil woman who doesn't want anyone around her, you can always rely on the female antagonist to send chills down your spine. Even the female doll in Chucky movies can sometimes be weirder and more disturbing than Chucky himself.
I said wake up! Right now!
With that being said, in today's video, we're going to talk about 10 female antagonists that we faced in both indie and major horror games and gave us the most difficult challenges possible in order to bypass them, evade them, or even hide from them until we found a way out. So let's not waste any more time on this long intro and just start the countdown. This one is obviously very familiar to older gamers who followed the Fear franchise from its beginning in 2005 until its last installment in 2011, which remains symbolic to this day and makes us wonder when we will get the 4th one. Even though there are so many memorable characters in the series, Alma Wade remains the most iconic and also the most disturbing for so many reasons. She is the primary antagonist here, and she possesses immense telekinetic and telepathic powers, allowing her to manipulate the environment and project terrifying illusions into the minds of others. However, it's important to note that Alma's backstory is tragic and sad, as she was kept imprisoned and subjected to inhumane experiments, resulting in her psychic abilities growing uncontrollably, and as a result, she becomes vengeful and seeks to inflict harm on those who have wronged her. And to be fair, you can't blame her for that considering the pain she went through. Anyway, throughout the Fear series, Alma is portrayed as a malevolent force, haunting the game's protagonist and causing chaos and destruction everywhere in a disconcerting and devilish style that makes her look even more powerful. In many cases, she appears as a ghostly apparition, often showing up in a torn nightgown and with long, dark hair obscuring her face, which is a casual look that contributes to the creepiness of her existence in the place. Alma's presence and actions create a sense of psychological horror and tension for the player, making her an unforgettable character in the realm of horror gaming even after so many years of the franchise's absence. So she definitely belongs on this list, and no one can deny that she's the type of challenging antagonist that comes once in a while. If you tell me that you disagree with my choice on this one, and that you played this game and finished it easily without any stress or pressure, then congratulations, because that means that you're a professional liar or you didn't play the game in the first place. Anyone who plays this game can understand that it's the definition of pressure, horror, and anxiety. And the main reason for that is none other than the presence of its crazy antagonist, which is the old granny. She is an elderly woman who seems sweet and harmless at first, but is actually a deranged and sadistic individual who's more psychotic than you can ever imagine. She possesses heightened hearing, making it challenging for you to move around without alerting her no matter how you try to be strategic or careful. She patrols the house constantly, and your only chance to evade her is to hide, solve puzzles, and collect items to unlock new areas, and ultimately find a way to escape. Granny's character design contributes to the game's horror atmosphere as she has pale skin, vacant eyes, and a hunched-over posture, which add to her eerie and unsettling appearance and look. She moves slowly, but at the same time, she can quickly become dangerous if you fail to avoid her or if you panic and run into her unintentionally, which happens a lot, by the way. However, the crazier part is that there are claims that the Granny in the game is actually inspired by true events and a real woman from real life. If you want to know more about it, you can check out the video of Lucas where he explained the story thoroughly and talked about how the game intertwines with the real world more than we think.
Better run.
When it comes to survival horror games, there are a multitude of bosses and antagonists that stick in our minds for a long time after the game ends. And among those antagonists, I think it's safe to say that Laura reserved her place fair and square. Laura is a highly mutated and grotesque creature who possesses immense strength and agility with her appearance, which is characterized by disfigured limbs, elongated claws, and distorted face. She emits blood-curdling screams and moves with relentless speed, making her a formidable and terrifying opponent. Her origins and backstory are not explicitly revealed in the game, but it is suggested that she was once a patient at the Beacon Mental Hospital, where the events of the story take place. And it is thought that Laura is transformed into a monstrous entity as a result of scientific experiments and the horrors inflicted upon her. Well, I actually made that up because the truth is that the real Laura is actually dead. And this creature is actually an imaginary version of Laura that's inside the mind of Ruben Victoriano, who's Laura's brother and the main antagonist of the game. She's characterized by her relentless pursuit of the protagonist, Sebastian Castellanos, especially since she has incredible speed, which makes her attacks extremely dangerous. Her primary method of attack involves wielding a large blade attached to her arm, which she uses to slash and impale her victims, and she also exhibits erratic behavior and emits guttural, animalistic noises, adding to her terrifying presence. Defeating her requires a combination of careful evasion, quick reflexes, and the effective use of weaponry. And most importantly, you must exploit her weaknesses, such as her sensitivity to fire, to deal damage and ultimately overcome her. Beside being one of the scariest and most dangerous female antagonists in horror gaming, she's also considered one of the most challenging bosses in general. So you better be careful if you haven't played The Evil Within and you're planning to jump on it sometime soon.
This is where the lost are found. And vengeance rears. Vengeful souls are born of violent death.
Infliction is one of these psychological horror games that stood out in the last 5 years due to its impressive visuals, creepy atmosphere, an enigmatic story that hides a lot of secrets and keeps you seeking answers until the end. However, what made it even more appealing for horror fans was obviously the crazy female antagonist who doesn't get tired of chasing you all over the place. She's a manifestation of the protagonist's deceased wife, who met a tragic end of which you're not aware of the details and circumstances. She appears as a haunting and wicked person within the game's environment, often stalking and tormenting the player as they explore the dark and foreboding locations. Throughout the playthrough, the wife's ghostly presence becomes increasingly menacing, forcing you to stay focused all the time and be smart in your movements to avoid her and stay hidden from her. She generally utilizes various methods to frighten and unsettle you, including appearing suddenly out of nowhere, leaving ominous messages, and even engaging in aggressive direct pursuit. The character of the wife is intricately connected to the game's storyline and serves as a catalyst for the protagonist's exploration of their troubled past, making unraveling the mysteries surrounding her and their shared history a key aspect of the game's progression. So if you're unfamiliar with the full story and want to discover it by yourself, then make sure to keep in mind that this woman won't let you feel safe at all, and she will make your experience as stressful as possible.
There you are. Miss. What the
Asian horror games have had a big impact on the horror gaming industry over the past decade because of the many great atmospheric experiences we had with games from countries like Japan, Taiwan, and Indonesia, which focused on the mystifying aspects of each country's folklore and traditions. But one of the projects that really shined and caught our interest was the horror game Home Sweet Home from Thailand, which had a crazy antagonist that sent chills down our spines and forced us to master some stealth mechanics. She is a girl called Belly, and she is the first major enemy the protagonist faced in his quest to find his wife Jane, where she stalks him relentlessly with a box cutter. She was a university student with an unrequited crush on a boy named Shane, and due to her seeming antisociality and desperate need for his affection, she turned to black magic to remove Shane's girlfriend, who was in the way of her goal of having Shane to herself. However, she misused these spells, which resulted in her becoming sick, which led to her early death, and she eventually became a ghost for an evil ritual on the night of the eclipse. On the other side, you'll find another female antagonist in the second installment of the game, which is a traditional performer called Rattray. She is very vain about her looks, and due to her grandmother spoiling and favoring her throughout her life, she believes she is entitled because of her own beauty, to the extent that when her desires are not immediately granted, she will resort to manipulation. She is depicted as an individual without remorse or morals, and she only accepts someone's presence when they're praising her looks and showing devotion. In other words, she is crazy as hell, and she'll hunt you all the time to put all her anger on you and punish you for whatever reason. And even if you try to hide, she can still show up out of nowhere and catch you. So you better learn some hardcore stealth skills before jumping on this game.
Don't you give me that tone, young lady.
Zoe, come look. Come see her gift. Look at all the pretties my little girl has given me. Jesus! Kiss me, lover!
Oh, what the hell? Get to the garage! Get some rope! Go, now!
This character was mentioned in my last video as well, when I talked about moments in horror games that gave us heart attacks. So I think it's obvious that if we're talking about female antagonists that made our gaming experience a living hell, then Lady Marguerite should be among the first ones that come to mind. In Resident Evil 7, Marguerite is portrayed as a deeply disturbed and angry individual, and due to her exposure to the dangerous mutagenic substance known as the mold, she undergoes a grotesque transformation, resulting in her body becoming infested with insects.
Gonna get ya!
This transformation grants her extraordinary abilities, such as controlling and summoning swarms of insects to attack her foes. And when I say her foes, I obviously mean you as a player. As you walk across different areas in the game, you encounter her numerous times, and she actively hunts you and poses a significant threat throughout the Baker estate. Marguerite's character plays a vital role in the game's storyline, as her actions and presence contribute to the unraveling of the dark secrets surrounding the Baker family and the mysterious events that have unfolded within the abode. Encounters with her often involve stealth and strategic evasion, as engaging with her directly in combat can be a daunting and challenging task that you will probably regret due to the fact that she's so insane and unpredictable. So if you want to have a decent chance of bypassing her as fast as possible, then make sure to keep it low and avoid being too offensive, because that will only make her even more dangerous. Now, I think it's obvious that this game was going to be mentioned on this list for the same reason it was mentioned last time when I talked about its intense moments that almost gave us heart attacks. Because again, Lucy should be the star of this video since she's also one of the female antagonists that gave the hardest time possible due to her unsettling looks and history. In 1961, Lucy resided within her family's residence, engaging in activities such as drawing, playing with toys, and seeking refuge in her treehouse. Unexpectedly, a malevolent entity initiated communication with her through television and radio, initially instilling fear in her. However, this entity known as the Demon, which is also female by the way, expressed a desire for companionship and attempted to establish a friendship with Lucy, and as time passed, Lucy grew weary of the demon's presence, yet it persisted in its pursuits. Over time, the demon commanded her to do bad things like harm her beloved Pete bird named Pico, which she eventually did under the influence of the demon's possession. But when her parents confronted her about the bird's demise, Lucy shifted blame onto the demon, holding it responsible for the tragedy. However, her deeply horrified parents reluctantly resorted to medical interventions because they didn't take her claims seriously. Lucy received injections, which unfortunately only exacerbated her suffering and deteriorated her mental well-being, and as her parents' concerns heightened, Lucy's condition worsened to the point where she even ceased recognizing her own mother. The bottom line, guys, is that this girl had a very disturbing and tragic past, but apparently she has no one to punish for her misery beside you. So if you're planning to face her, then please remember that she's a master at sneaking and hiding, and her face is not very pleasant to see either. Back to the Evil Within franchise again, but this time with an antagonist that I really feel is very underrated, and that most people don't talk about much, even though she's pretty much one of the biggest elements that elevated the psychological horror side of the experience. She is a mysterious entity that haunts the streets of Union and instills fear in its residents, but even though her primary target appears to be Sebastian Castellanos, scattered logs and diary entries found throughout the town suggest that she randomly selects other victims, relentlessly stalking and tormenting them until they succumb to paranoia. Interestingly, she is only visible to those she targets, and in terms of appearance, she takes on the form of a disheveled woman wearing ragged robes, and her face remains obscured by long hair, only briefly revealed during her attacks.
What's it doing this time? What does that thing want from me?
Despite her slow and shuffling gait, she can swiftly accelerate to alarming speeds when pursuing her prey, and her presence is accompanied by a drop in temperature and the envelopment of the environment in a fog that dissipates once the player escapes her proximity. A visual distortion effect becomes evident when she draws near, intensifying as she gets closer, serving as a signal for you to either stay hidden or seek an escape route. Beside that, an eerie rendition of Claire de Lune emanates from her as she continuously sings, aiding you in estimating her distance. She also possesses extraordinary abilities, including the ability to phase through walls and doors, as well as levitation and telekinesis, which she employs in her pursuit of victims. She is also impervious to damage, instantly draining the life force of anyone she catches, resulting in their immediate demise. So if I had to choose between Laura and this one when it comes to the scarier antagonist, I think this female wins by a slight margin due to the fact that she's more enigmatic and spiritual, and she poses a more psychological threat because it's not easy to locate her.
Oh, shit. Why is it after me? What does it have to do with this place?
If you think that Visage is all about Lucy, then apparently you don't know what other terrifying things that game has to offer. Because the antagonist, Dolores, is actually an even more dusty and creepier opponent that will make your mission of finishing the game harder than ever. Dolores is an elderly woman who appears disheveled and wears a nightgown, and her expression lacks emotion, indicating a possible decline in her mental and physical health. She was married to a man named George, and they were raising a baby together, but even though she found joy in listening to opera music and drinking tea, which may have included medication, by the way, after moving to a new house, her mental health deteriorated, exhibiting symptoms of dementia, bipolar disorder, anxiety, and violent paranoia. George struggled to care for both Dolores and the baby simultaneously, causing him increasing distress, and despite his knowledge of mental health, he couldn't find a way to cure her. Dolores' paranoia led her to spy on George, suspecting him of wrongdoing to the extent that she believed he wanted to poison her with rat poison. Her behavior was very unstable, and it ranged from being very angry at her husband to asking for forgiveness and being extremely calm. However, her dementia and paranoia intensified over time, and she eventually killed George because she was obsessed with the idea that he was going to do something to her or take her away. The rest of her story is even more messed up, and I won't even talk about it in case you haven't played the game yet and are planning to visit it in the future. So if you're planning to do so, then I hope that I gave you a good idea about how crazy Dolores is and why you need to be worried about her. I talked about this one in my last video and I also put it at number 1, but I honestly don't think that it makes sense to make a video about female antagonists in horror games without mentioning this woman. Lisa, who is also referred to as Lisa the Ghost or Lisa the PT Lady, is a vengeful and malevolent spirit haunting the player's character throughout the playable teaser of the canceled game Silent Hills. She is portrayed as a tormented and disfigured apparition with a chilling presence. She stalks you everywhere, appearing unexpectedly and even pursuing you with aggressive and frightening behavior. As you progress through the looping hallway and unravel the secrets of the game, your encounters with her become more frequent and terrifying because, in some cases, she can literally be right behind you without you even noticing it. Lisa's backstory is not explicitly revealed in the demo, leaving much to interpretation and speculation, but it is suggested through various visual and audio cues that she was a victim of domestic violence, possibly murdered by her husband or another family member within the house, which is sad and explains her agony. Despite the fact that the whole experience is just a portion of a full game that never saw the light of day, Lisa is still considered the most disturbing antagonist in the history of psychological horror gaming, and it's also the source of inspiration for many other characters that we encountered in the indie horror games that were created afterwards. Okay guys, that's all for today. I listed 10 of the scariest and most insane female antagonists you can ever face in horror games. And I think the video was informative and useful when it comes to understanding the characteristics of each enemy and how you should deal with them. So please don't be lazy with the like button and give this compilation a thumbs up, especially if you want me to make another video about 10 of the spookiest male enemies. I think that would be an amazing sequel to this video and also another chance to compare the characters with each other to come to an ultimate conclusion about the scariest one. So until next time, stay strong and keep the horror going.